In the summer of the 12th century, reapers working a field in rural England stopped in their tracks. Beside an old wolf trap, half hidden in the grass, sat two children, a brother and a sister. Their clothes were made of a fabric no one recognized. Their speech matched no known tongue. And their skin, by the account of two separate, respected medieval historians, was green. Where did they come from? Why would two trained chroniclers, centuries before the age of hoaxes and tabloids, risk their credibility recording something like this as fact? And what happened to the boy and girl once the village took them in? To understand this story, we have to go back to a small village in Suffolk, a place called Woolpit. Woolpit sits about 7 miles east of Bury St. Edmunds, in one of the most densely settled corners of rural England. Its name comes from the Old English wolf pit, a reference to the pits dug and baited across the region to trap wolves that threaten livestock. This was not a remote or isolated place. It was a working village tied to the wealthy Abbey of Bury St. Edmunds, its rhythm set by the harvest and the church calendar. The events we're about to describe were not first written down by folklorists or storytellers chasing a good tale. They come to us through two of the most credible historians of medieval England. The first, William of Newburgh, was an Augustinian canon writing far to the north in Yorkshire. He says he heard the story from trustworthy sources, though he never names them. The second, Ralph of Coggeshall, was an abbot in Essex, closer to Suffolk, and he claimed something rarer, a named eyewitness. A knight called Sir Richard de Calne, of Wykes, whom Ralph says he knew personally. No exact year survives for what happened next. William places it during the reign of King Stephen, in the turbulent years known as the Anarchy. Ralph's account hints at a later date, perhaps under Henry II. What we do know is that Richard de Calne, the knight both writers connect to the story, died before 1188, which gives historians their only firm anchor in time. It was by every account an ordinary harvest, and then it wasn't. As the story goes, the two children were found sitting beside the wolf pit, dazed, clutching each other, clearly terrified. A boy and a girl. Their skin held an unmistakable green tint. Their clothing was foreign, made the chroniclers say, from a material no one in the village could identify. And when the villagers spoke to them, gently, urgently, the children answered in a language that meant nothing to anyone present. No interpreter in the region, we're told, could make sense of it. The children were brought to the home of Sir Richard de Calne, and there the story takes its strangest turn. For several days, the children refused every single thing they were offered to eat. Not out of defiance, they simply would not or could not touch the food in front of them. Then someone brought out raw broad beans, still on the stalk, and the children ate, hungrily. For a time, it was the only food they would accept. Slowly, over the following months, something shifted. The children began to eat other foods, and as they did, their green coloring began to fade. Until, we're told, they looked like any other English children of their time. But not both of them made it that far. The boy, described as the younger and frailer of the two, grew sick. He was baptized into the Christian faith, and shortly after he died. Whatever answers he might have carried with him went into the ground. The girl lived, and as she learned English, she began at last to explain. She said they had come from a land where the sun never rose, a place of permanent twilight, which William of Newburgh records her calling St. Martin's Land. Ralph's account adds a detail that has stayed with people for 8 centuries. That everything there, the people, the land, the very air, was green. Both accounts agree that she described tending her father's cattle, hearing a strange sound like the ringing of bells, and then, suddenly, without explanation, finding herself and her brother here, blinking in the sunlight beside a wolf pit in Suffolk. What actually happened to those children? Was there ever really a hidden land they came from, or were they simply lost, frightened, and far from anywhere anyone could name? The girl, we're told, went on to live a full life, though here even the two original sources disagree. Ralph says she stayed on in the de Calne household as a servant for years, remembered as wanton and impudent. William says instead that she married a man from King's Lynn, some 40 miles away, and was, as far as he knew, still living there at the time he was writing. Two respected historians, two different endings for the same woman. For centuries, this story mostly disappeared. After the two original chronicles, it went almost unmentioned for roughly 300 years, resurfacing briefly in William Camden's Britannia in 1586, where Camden, notably, treated it with open skepticism, an early instance of critical doubt rather than modern cynicism. It surfaces again in the 1600s in Robert Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy, which floated, almost in passing, the idea that the children had simply fallen from the sky. That idea would resurface centuries later in a much more serious form. In 1996, astronomer and writer Duncan Lunan proposed that the children may have come from another world entirely, accidentally displaced by some unexplained phenomenon. It's a striking theory, and it's one worth mentioning, but it remains speculation, built on modern imagination layered onto a medieval text, not on any direct evidence within it. More grounded theories exist too. Historian Derek Brewer suggested a simpler explanation, that these were ordinary, malnourished children suffering from a condition called chlorosis, which can tint skin faintly green, lost, frightened, and unable to communicate in an unfamiliar dialect. Researcher Paul Harris proposed something more specific in 1998, that the children may have been Flemish refugees, orphaned amid the period's conflicts, their strange language, simply an unfamiliar regional dialect. Modern academic John Clark, whose work remains the most rigorous examination of this case, has raised serious challenges to both of these theories. And to date, no single explanation has satisfied every detail in the record. Some historians go further still, arguing that the entire search for a real explanation may be missing the point, that this was, first and foremost, a medieval wonder tale meant to sit alongside the era's other stories of otherworldly encounters, not a literal event requiring a modern scientific solution. 800 years on, the Church of St. Mary still stands in Woolpit, and not far from it, the village's own sign, put up in 1977, depicts a wolf, the parish church, and two small green children. The legend was never buried. It became part of the village's own identity. No theory fully accounts for every detail two independent historians chose to write down. Perhaps that's uncomfortable for a modern audience used to tidy answers. Or perhaps it's exactly why this story has survived 8 centuries when so many others have been forgotten. Because somewhere between careful history and quiet folklore, we're left with a genuinely open question. 2 frightened children, a language no one understood, and a story 2 serious men thought was worth the risk of writing down. So, what do you think really happened at Woolpit that harvest, all those centuries ago? Lost refugees, a garbled legend, or something history simply couldn't explain? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed uncovering this mystery, give this video a like and subscribe for more strange, true stories from history's forgotten corners. And next time, we'll be looking into another case that respected historians once